Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks. I'm Dave Altavilla, and I am joined here with my compatriots from HotHardware.com, none other than Marco Chiappetta.
How's it going, everybody?
And the incomparable Paul Lilly in his fedora and headphones.
Hello, hello.
Good to have you with us, Paul. Marco, how's everybody doing today? How's the week shaping up so far for a Tuesday?
So far, so good. I guess I can't complain. Weather's nice. Got a little bit of work done this morning. Freshly showered. Chickenpox are almost healed, so I guess I'm okay.
That's right. You had a bout with the chickenpox.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to get healthy, losing all this weight. Turn 40, get the chickenpox. Makes sense.
Was that your first time getting chickenpox?
Yeah, I didn't have them as a kid, so I was surprised when I went to the doctor, and yeah.
I think it's one of those things that you can only get once, right? Like, you get chickenpox and then you're done with them for the rest of your life.
It depends how severe a case. If it was a really mild case, you can get them again. But now that the virus is in me, I guess I can get shingles, so something else to look forward to.
Fun, fun, fun.
Getting all the stuff.
Well, you don't look pocked up or nothing. That's good.
Thankfully.
We're not pocked up. That's, you got to start somewhere. It might be a low bar, but we're going to start with that, right? All right.
Exactly.
So let's talk about some tech instead of chickenpox, because those are kind of icky. Let's talk about some stuff we saw this week. Marco, you took a look at Nvidia's latest offering in killer flagship GPUs, right?
I did. Let me grab it and show everybody. This is the baby right here.
Whoa,
this is what everybody was speculating was coming as soon as the Titan X launched. So this is the GTX 980 Ti. Let's do a quick little tour. It looks just like many of the recently released GeForces. You have the branding right there. You have the lighted GeForce logo here. Outputs are similar as well. So the 980 Ti.
You got dual 8-pin PCI Express Connect power?
No, 1 6-pin, 1 8-pin. 1
6, 1 8. Okay, so it's not that brutal.
At the heart of this bad boy is NVIDIA's GM200 GPU, same GPU that is on the Titan X. The main differences with this card and the Titan X are in the memory configuration and the GPU setup. So although it's the same chip on the card, there are two SMs disabled. There's two streaming multiprocessors disabled. So that means there are fewer active CUDA cores. There's 28 16 CUDA cores on the 980 Ti and 176 texture units. This card also has only 6 gigs of memory, whereas the Titan X has 12 gigs. 6 gigs is plenty for resolutions all the way up to 4K, so that's really not an issue. The Titan X is truly overkill with those 12 gigs for the vast majority of circumstances. So what NVIDIA is able to do is take basically all of the features of the Titan X, slightly less performance, fewer CUDA cores, half the memory, and now all of a sudden you have a card that offers roughly 95-97% of the performance of a Titan X for $649 instead of a cool grand. Sounds good, right?
Sounds pretty good to me. So you said what, about 80 or 95% of a Titan X?
Yeah. So for basically in any real world situation, you're not going to be able to tell the difference between the 980 Ti and the Titan X. Let me just give a couple of examples. So if you're looking at 3D Mark was one of the bigger kind of deltas here. You're looking at a score of about 6,200 for a Titan X versus 5,300 on the 980 Ti. But if we go to an actual game, like I'm going to jump to the Crysis 3 numbers here.
Yeah,
so
I'll see if I can share it out.
Crysis 3 at 2560 by 1440. 980 Ti, 44 frames per second average. Titan X, 45 frames per second. Bump that up to 4K, and you're looking at 21.4 versus 22.2 frames per second. So in real-world games, the delta is so tiny that the 980 Ti is just a way better buy than a Titan X for almost everybody.
Cool, cool.
Question for you, Marco.
Sure.
Who do you see would be the best candidate to upgrade to one of these things? I mean, someone looking to buy a new video card that wants Titan X performance for a bargain, obviously they're a good candidate, but I have like a 780 Ti.
Right.
I'm probably not at the cutoff where I should look at upgrading, but where do you think that line is at?
So there's two ways to look at it, right? Someone like you who went out and bought a 780 Ti, or people like you that bought 780 Ti's, are probably drooling over this. You know, it's the true generational leap. It would be an upgrade. Now, with that said, if you're a little more practical, and for most people, 780 Ti is not really hurting right now, unless you're running a huge multi-monitor setups, 4K displays. 780 Ti is still plenty powerful. So I would say 780 and below, it would be a significant jump forward. 780 Ti and forward, it's if you're an enthusiast and you want the best enthusiast card, that's it. But as far as needing to upgrade, only if you've got like a crazy high-end monitor and you're feeling that your current card isn't quite cutting it anymore.
Gotcha.
You know, it's still it's surprising to me when you look at, for example, the Crysis 3 numbers at 4K. Now, admittedly, Crysis is a pig of a game engine. We know that, but it's impressive. I mean, it's got some pretty good visual effects for sure, but it's just not very efficient. But you're talking about, you know, even a Titan X only hits 22 frames per second in Crysis 3 at 4K, and a 980 Ti gets about 21 frames a second, right? So
yep.
You're still not able to game every, you know, flagship title or, you know, top-end game title at 4K with a single card these days. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes. So with every game, no, you're not going to get 4K with smooth frame rates across the board. With that said, and as you know, because we've talked about this many times over the years, I tend to test with the absolute max highest quality settings possible so that we can have a big set of data for comparison. So because this game is so taxing, you know, because the settings that we're using are so taxing at 4K, we can get a long stretch out of some benchmarks and still have, you know, realistic frame rates. We're not playing games that are getting 200 frames per second and keeping them in the test suite for a long period of time. Now, Crysis 3, if you crank down, that was 4K with AA and max and ISO, by the way. So
yeah.
Crank down the AA slightly, crank down image quality slightly, you can get it playable. And then you can go to a game like, say, BioShock Infinite. This game completely maxed out. Titan X, 54 frames per second, 980 Ti, 52 frames per second, completely maxed at 4K with AA. So again, just the slightest tweaks, you can get, you know, that 60 frames per second mark. Ideally, you want to throw a second one in and be super nerd and have ultra powerful gaming, but not everybody has $1,300 to throw down on graphics cards.
Super nerd, you should be a super nerd, absolutely. Well,
I shouldn't say that. I should say a leader in the PC master race. That's what I should be saying.
Nah, super nerd's good, dude. Go with that. All right, so let's talk about something a little bit more. I don't know if it's mainstream necessarily, but it could be if AMD pulls the rabbit out of their hat with this one, like they seem to be lining up to do. AMD actually flew us out to an editor's day a couple weeks ago out in San Francisco, and we got a look at their next generation, or sixth generation actually, number sixth generation APU called Carrizo, and this is a system on a chip. True system on a chip for notebooks. It's got integrated graphics, integrated Radeon graphics. It is a quad-core variant or less. I think you can probably see that they'll maybe parse this out in other variants down the line. But the architecture is based on an enhanced bulldozer core. So they took that original architecture from way back when, beefed it up. Increased some cache resources on chip, specifically data cache, L1 data cache, a little bit larger caches, tweaked it out. You've got support for DDR3, 2133 megahertz memory. You've got up to 8 Radeon cores on board now, and that's in the targeted SKU that they're going for is the 15-watt TDP, or 15-watt thermal envelope, which is pretty much the sweet spot of the notebook market. It is the average thin and light ultrabook, if you will, to use an Intel term, which AMD probably wouldn't appreciate. But the thin and light, you know, MacBook Air, you know, all these real thin and light 3-pound or less type machines That's the 15-watt envelope. And you might get a few that are a little bit higher end, a little bit heavier decked out machines in the 4-pound range, but 4 pounds and under for that 15-watt envelope. And it's got a couple of interesting firsts on board. You've got support for DirectX 12 in the graphics core, which for an integrated processor with graphics is a first. And you've also got support for H.265, obviously the follow-on to 8.264 compression, video compression, or what they call HEVC, high efficiency video compression, I believe is what it stands for. And the long and short of it is that allows you to compress video files to half the size for with the same image quality without losing it. It's a lossless compression method. Or you could keep the same video size as an H.264 video file and have increased fidelity. So it's got support for that. That's built in again in the video engine. And the other thing it has, which is perhaps even more interesting, is an integrated south bridge. So now you're talking about quad-core CPU, integrated graphics, integrated memory controller, PCI Express on board, PCI Express links, and an integrated south bridge on silicon. This isn't just a multi-chip module where they're taking a south bridge die and packaging it next to the main core. It's actually integrated in the silicon of the core as a block. And so what you're left with is a highly integrated processor, highly integrated APU, as AMD likes to call it, true system on a chip with the entire design on a single package, so very efficient for system builders. I imagine they'll, the ODMs that are stepping out with notebooks based on this are going to very much appreciate that elegance and design. And it's lining up to be something possibly pretty impressive from AMD, and frankly, they need to pull that out. What do you guys think about this?
So you want to go first, Paul?
Yeah. Well, I was gonna ask, do you think you're gonna see these in like mini PCs, like what Zotac puts out as well, or are they gonna stick to notebooks with Carrizo?
Well, I think that's a fair question. I think you'll see them absolutely. You'll see them in everything from notebooks. That's a very good point, Paul. Everything from notebooks to mini PCs like Zotac's to maybe even all-in-ones. One of the things we're all aware when you talk about an all-in-one design, monitor and computer all-in-one on the desktop, they tend to use notebook platforms for their base system platform. So that would stand to reason, Paul. Absolutely.
So then, along those lines, any prediction how the onboard graphics are going to compare to the new Broadwell chips with the Iris Pro?
Yeah, I can't make predictions. We haven't seen it yet, and we're actually waiting to get seeded notebooks based on this platform. And actually, out of Computex, I guess there were quite a few on display from virtually all of the major vendors: HP, Asus, Lenovo. They were all out there with machines. They look like sort of a little bit more mainstream, lower price SKUs, admittedly. Didn't get any hands-on time because we weren't at Computex, but we saw some pictures that AMD had snapped of them on display. And I think, to answer your question, I think it's going to be typical for AMD to have their strong suit in graphics. I think you'll see them being, better at multimedia and gaming in general than Broadwell, current, Intel Core i 5000 series, Core i5 5000 series. But I think you'll also see the typical dominance from Intel on the CPU side. So you'll have that trade-off, and I think what's interesting about this for AMD is that they're claiming anywhere from, I want to say it's, I think their numbers are sort of, it depends on what you're talking about, because they bump up clock speed a little bit on this as well. So with combined bump up in clock speed to some of the increase in IPC, you're talking about on the order of about a 15% gain at the CPU level, and I think they were able to realize at the 15-watt envelope up to like a 65% increase in graphics performance. So, again, based on additional cores at the 15-watt TDP and additional clock speed. So, it should be a pretty good chip with those sort of numbers being claimed in terms of performance boost. Marco?
Yeah, so actually, just to build on what Paul was just asking about, even if the graphics performance turns out to be in line with Intel's next gen Iris Pro, AMD has a huge advantage in compatibility with their drivers and just game optimizations. So you might run a bunch of tests and say, oh, Intel's competitive, and they are. Intel's been doing a great job lately, but across the board, AMD's graphics drivers are superior in terms of gaming. Now, I think the most important, or one of the more interesting things with Carrizo, that integrated South Bridge is a big deal, because even if the numbers are just competitive across the board, battery life's competitive, not quite out of the park. CPU's competitive, graphics are competitive. I think OEMs are going to love building systems with this thing, because all they really have to do is hang some storage and memory off it, and they're done. Some I/O, some memory, some storage, some connectivity, and they're finished. It's simple. It's going to simplify the motherboards significantly in those notebooks.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think design elegance is definitely on their side. It's something that Intel hasn't done yet, surprisingly, to integrate the South Bridge. And let me screen share out, since you had asked on the performance side, Paul. Here's a look at a Cinebench graph, which is a benchmark that we use quite a bit. I don't know if you guys can see that well, but basically what you're seeing here at the 15-watt envelope, multi-threaded performance gain in terms of frequency is the green bar, and that's somewhere around 45%. And then in terms of additional IPC, that's the yellow build on top of that. So they're showing and so I'm going to take this back. It's actually 55%, which is a lot. This is CPU throughput in gains for last generation Steamroller core to the new Excavator core. That's the CPU core that they've codenamed for Carrizo. It's the Excavator core. So Steamroller, last gen APU to Excavator, they're showing in multi-thread performance a 55% gain in performance based on gains from clock speed and IPC, and the IPC gain is minimal. It's 10% roughly. So, actually sounds pretty good, and that's all within the same power envelope that they want to underscore that. So 55% in Cinebench, Marco. What do you think about that? I mean, we sort of, the first thing we do when we get a new platform in, Marco, right? First thing we do is load up Cinebench. Okay, how's this thing chew through Cinebench? It's one of those things that it's a really good yardstick for performance at the CPU level.
Yeah, I think I mean, if those numbers are reality with a retail product, it's going to look nice. I think we need to run some numbers and see it.
Yeah, good point. Good point. It's all about in-house testing. The marketing slides, as we know, well, they're marketing, so you got to be careful, right?
Exactly.
All right, and let's see. Let's move on to something else from Nvidia. We're bouncing between AMD and Nvidia here. The Shield. You took a look at their Shield console. I'm going to call it a console. It's a set-top box. It's a console. It's an Android device. Tell us about it.
So first, I have to say that I really like this thing. So if I get a little nutty, that's why. So here it is.
If I get a little nutty.
It's one of those things. It's kind of outside of what I would normally look at, but I love almost basically everything NVIDIA did with this thing. So here's the Shield Android TV. This is what it looks like. You can rest it on your, on a shelf. It also has an optional stand, so you can stand it up. This little bad boy is packing an Tegra X1 processor with a 256-core Maxwell GPU, 3 gigs of RAM. This particular model is the 16 gigabyte with 16 gigs of internal storage. There's a Pro version with a 500 gig hard drive as well. That's $100 more. 802.11 AC, 2x2 MIMO Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Gigabit Ethernet, HDMI 2, a couple of USB ports, micro SD expansion slot. There's even a micro USB port for charging or connecting this to a PC for side-loading apps or what have you. So this is basically a ultra powerful Tegra X1 powered tablet running Android TV without the screen. Now NVIDIA includes with this guy in the box for $199 for the 16 gig version. You also get a Shield wireless controller. This is the same controller that was available for the Shield tablet. And as an additional accessory, This is the wireless remote. Now, both the Shield controller and wireless remote offer full voice controls, and they have headphone jacks. So you can be completely wireless and have a headset on and use voice controls, voice communications, voice search, and also listen to the content. Now, if you step back and you look at this thing, $200 for a little set-top box. You know, like Fire TVs, like how cheap do they go on sale? Like $60. You know,
Yeah,
Apple TV, I think they're under $100. There's tons of these cheap little streamers, but Nvidia kind of went in a completely different direction. So you have what's basically the best or the most powerful Android TV device with Tegra X1, right? So that's going to command a little bit of a premium. You also have, it's the only device that can do 4K 60 hertz playback. So if you have a Netflix account and a 4K TV, you know, you can actually get some of the best 4K content available. You have access to all of Nvidia's grid gaming stuff. You can stream games from a GeForce PC to your living room on this thing. You have tons of Tegra optimized games available. All the games available in the Google Play Store. It's just got so much sort of going for it. It's kind of like, you know, one of those devices has tons of different things going on, but all told for $199, I really dig this thing.
Okay, so let's talk about performance real quick, and then I want to pose a question on this thing because it's an interesting product.
Yeah.
How many Maxwell cores on the graphics side for this thing again, by the way?
256, so a tenth of a 980 Ti, a little bit less than a tenth of a 980 Ti.
Why are you smiling so much?
Because it's cool that the same tech is inside this little guy.
Yeah, so here's I'm just putting up a GFX bench, GFX 3.0 T-Rex off screen, which is one of the benchmarks we run on Android for tablets and smartphones to show comparable SoC performance between devices. The yellow bar is Shield Android TV. 122 frames per second versus the fastest number we've ever recorded prior to that was the Shield tablet with Tegra K1 at 65 frames per second. The iPad Air, I think, it's not on this chart, but it's down in the 60s as well. This thing, basically, just to give you a feel for graphics performance and performance in general, this thing basically is 2x the graphics performance of any ARM-based SoC on the market today. Is that a fair assessment?
For current gen stuff that's out there, yes. Apple TV is about to get a big upgrade because they're going to go A8 with the next one. At least that's what's supposed to happen. But still, it's still going to be fractional versus this. It's going to be quite a while before another small little set-top box has the kind of graphics horsepower of this device.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at like Qualcomm Snapdragon 810 in the HTC One M9, for example, you know, that thing, even in like 3D Mark Ice Storm Unlimited, which is another benchmark that we run, the HTC One M9 is the fastest SoC outside of, from a graphics standpoint, outside of Tegra K1 and Tegra X1, from what we've seen in testing in that benchmark. So, yeah, very strong performance. So, great gamer, streamer. You've got all that Android TV goodness. Is it really something where the average Joe is gonna? I mean, are you gonna really plug this thing in and use it a lot? Is it going to be central to your home theater setup? Because I've always found with these types of devices, at least, and maybe it's just a result of the lack of capability of them versus something like this, which has much more gaming horsepower. I've always found that, you know, that Android set-top box or whatever, you know, based, you know, whether it be Google Chrome or, you know, or Chrome box, whatever, rather, or an Android streamer, I never really use it all that much.
So I would, and there's a couple of reasons. The first reason where this thing is staying glued to my TV right now is to watch Daredevil on Netflix in the best quality possible. So yes, but
4K streaming, is that what you were doing?
Well, I did 4K streaming on a monitor, but I'm not set up in my home theater yet. However, the other thing that's really, it's really the best Android TV streamer. So if you want the best experience with Android TV, this is it. It's just so fast and smooth and fluid. The voice controls just work so good. You can literally be on any screen and say, I want to watch the Avengers. And every app that you have installed that has access to the Avengers, it'll bring it right up. The other thing, I'm like this close to cutting my cable cord. I really don't watch tons of live TV. All of the big networks, are building apps to stream their content. And it's almost like I could save hundreds of dollars a month with something like this. Maybe get HBO Go, Showtime's app that's coming because boxing's like the only live sporting event I care about. So I'd want HBO, I'd want Showtime. There was so much free stuff. There was hundreds of shows on like the PBS Kids channel. You have access to tons of different channels already that are free. Then you have Netflix, which is really cheap, and I can almost get virtually all of the content I can get with cable, except for some live sporting events, for a fraction of the price and with better output quality. So, like I said, it's weird. You sort of have to make a case for it, and you have to have a use case where it fits. But where it fits, it's an awesome device.
So, Paul, would it fit in your home theater?
I think this is going to be an expensive podcast if my son watches it. He has the Shield handheld, and if he watches this, he's going to, after listening to Marco, he's going to want the Shield Android TV. And, of course, the 4K set for the bedroom.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I need to find a reason to break my TV so I can.
So yeah, thanks, Marco.
Let me buy 4K.
Yeah. No, I think it's interesting. I think Nvidia is going to do well with it, but it's really a question of how much these set-top box, these streamers catch on, beyond what's on the market currently. I mean, they've got a niche carved out now, but still haven't seen the kind of critical mass that we all expect from these things when they first hit the market.
It's also built in. It's also a fully functional Chromecast. Which is kind of cool. So. I know Chromecast is cheap, but like if you're, you can't. It's way more expensive. If you just wanted a cheap streamer, right? It's really hard to justify $200. If you want a really high quality streamer that can do 4K, that can access Nvidia's grid, that is also a Chromecast, that has access to Tegra optimized games, that includes a game controller. You can see how getting to $199 is possible. Regardless, I dig it.
Have you played some of the higher end Android games? What do you think? I mean, I know we're approaching console level graphics, but certainly you don't have the polish of some of the big AAA console titles.
Yes and no. There's three things. Things. Some games, if you're not running a game optimized for a controller, right? Nvidia gives you the tools to map buttons, but that experience isn't always great. If you're running a Tegra optimized game that Nvidia has set up properly for the controller, kicks ass. The other thing, and lots of those games look really good. Maybe not current gen console good or PC good, but they look really good. The kicker are the grid games. So the grid games are AAA, most of them AAA PC titles running at high quality settings, streaming at 1080p. So you have some latency issues to deal with and compression artifacts because it's basically streaming a video stream. However, in my eyes, many of them look as good or approaching as good, better, or approaching the console game. So the grid service right now it's still free. When it becomes a paid service, I don't know how much it's going to be. That might change the mix, but grid is like an awesome free add-on right now. I know Nvidia is still building it out, so they're not pimping it like crazy, but I think they should because it's really cool.
And it still does game streaming, right? So, like, if you have a GeForce,
from your PC also, local streaming is great, but you also have, even if you don't own the games, you have streaming from the grid service too right now.
So you could literally, with a GeForce-enabled desktop in the house, connected over the same network, you could stream from that, have that GPU do the work for you in your desktop, and play Crysis 3 on your, 55-inch LED TV.
Exactly.
Sweet. Yeah, no, I mean that's pretty good stuff. I agree. I haven't checked that out yet, and I'm eager to check that out to see how local game streaming plays on that thing. That'd be cool.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, let's move on to something a little bit more. Back to the mobile space, I guess. But staying in the gaming vein, we took a look at Alienware's Alienware 15, very original model, 15-inch gaming notebook. This is by no stretch an ultralight. It's a 7-pound machine. It is based on Intel Core i5 4210H quad core, 2.9 gigahertz quad core. So 3.5 gigahertz turbo boost speed on that. 15.6-inch display, 1920 by 1080, full HD display. 16 gig of RAM. This is the configuration we got in. 16 gig of RAM, 128 gig M2 SSD, and 1 terabyte 7200 RPM hard drive. So decked out for sure. The GPU is on board is a Nvidia GeForce GTX 970M with 3 gig of RAM, GDDR5, and so set up for some real good performance. $1499 as configured, which actually, if you think about it, SSD, 1 terabyte hard drive, and discrete 970M mobile graphics, and a quad-core CPU. That's actually not bad. $1,500. The other nice thing is that Dell Alienware offers something called a graphics amplifier. So you can connect to this thing, and I'll see if I can pull it up on the next page here. You can connect to this thing an external box that basically will house a discrete graphics card for you. Let me see if I can pull it up. And it connects over. Is it external PCI Express, Marco? I didn't actually review this, but I know you've seen this one.
It is external PCI Express, but a proprietary connector.
Yeah. Okay, so there it is. There's the 15-inch machine on the left, and the graphics amplifier on the right. Little cable goes out the back, connects to the graphics amplifier. In the graphics amplifier is a full GeForce GTX 980 graphics card, full desktop graphics card. Again, connected over PCI Express. And the 15-inch notebooks taps into that, and now you've got desktop-like performance in a 7-pound 15-inch notebook. Now that add-on gets you to $2,000 or thereabouts. Let me see if I can let me share this out again because that's kind of cool. This is a good picture here. Here you can see the setup. You pop the hood and there it is, GTX 980 just sitting there, waiting for you to come home and dock up to. So pretty cool stuff. Performance-wise, we saw some real good numbers. I'm just going to pull up. Well, let's pull up Batman. Why not? Batman Arkham Origins, a little bit older title, so a little bit easier on a notebook in terms of workload. But with the 970M on board, you're talking 94 frames per second at full 1080p with AA enabled and everything maxed out. That's 94 frames per second with the onboard graphics chip. That's average frames. Minimum frame rate was like 40, I think. And then with the graphics amplifier, you're talking about 111 frames per second. So, that's with sort of a. Let's go to something that's a little bit more of a GPU crusher. That's with something a little bit older, a little bit more mainstream. If we go to Metro Last Light, you're still talking about almost playable frame rates from a benchmark for us that we just call, it's a GPU crusher. We have it set at very high image quality, motion blur enabled, 1920 by 1080 resolution. You're talking 30 frames per second in Metro Last Light with this machine. Again, onboard graphics. Go to the amplifier, and now you're talking 46 frames per second over the GTX 980, and that's Metro Last Light, which is a crusher. It's one of those things where these notebooks, you have to have a use case. If you don't mind the extra bulk, 7 pounds certainly is not something that you're going to just throw in your bag and carry to the business meeting. It is what it is. It's a multimedia and gaming machine, and it's designed for that in terms of performance, and the thermal envelope you need just carries the weight. It's got a large battery. Battery life is not going to be your strong suit with this thing. We tested. Let's see, almost 2 hours in our Battery Eater Pro test, and then our web browsing light duty workload, 394 minutes, so you're talking, what is it, I don't know, 4 hours or something like that, just light duty web browsing. So it's not going to be the best on battery life, but if you need the horsepower, Alienware's got your machine, and we actually thought pretty well of it. We gave it a recommended, especially for the price, a solid deal at $1,500 base, and $2,000 or thereabouts with the graphics amplifier. I don't know though. You have to really want this in a gaming notebook. It's great for the LAN party, right?
Yeah, the one kicker too. Well, another kicker that the graphics amplifier it's a great option if you want much higher gaming performance at home. If you grab one of the notebooks with a mid-range dual-core processor, though, the GTX 980 is complete overkill in that amplifier because that dual-core CPU can never really keep that 980 fully fed and really cranking the frame. So you will see an increase in performance in GPU-bound circumstances, but not the GTX 980 paired to a dual-core mobile processor. It's not going to perform like a GTX 980 connected to a 8-core Haswell E. Something else to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's a good point. We had a 3.5 gigahertz quad-core mobile processor, and connecting it to that, it seemed to have no problem. It was a nice boost. But it's pretty cool. I mean, what do you think about the use case for this, Paul? I think it's interesting because you've got a 15-inch notebook that it's 7 pounds. Again, it's not super light, and you got it's a little bit more you could definitely get it in the backpack, but it's definitely a little bit more to cart around. But now,
I'm a big fan of the desktop replacements. Actually, I mean, it's 7 pounds. I don't really care. It's still easier to lug to the hotel than an actual desktop. So with this, if you want to game at home on an actual near desktop machine, you have the amplifier for that, and then you still get great graphics on the road. I really like it.
Yeah, no, I mean, you could see taking this thing on vacation and having it with you at the beach house, and then, when you get home, you have that graphics amplifier sitting on your desk and hooked up to your 30-inch panel or whatever you need to power that, and now your notebook does that too. It's your desktop as well. You get a 1 terabyte hard drive on this thing.
You make a good point about the price too, because as I've told you, I've been in the market for another laptop for a while now. When I spec them out, Alienware is pretty competitive with MSI and ASUS and the others that aren't boutique vendors.
Yep. So. Yeah. What do you think about the styling? I like it. I'm gonna see if I can share it out here again. It's typical Alienware design these days. Let me just present to everybody. There we go. Flat black. It's styled pretty well, I think. It's not killer. Like, honestly, I took a look at the Asus G751, which would be an alternative to this without the graphics amplifier option, obviously. But the G751 is really a nice-looking, sharp machine. It's got the sort of hot rod red accents in the back for venting.
Yeah, and I had a previous version of that. That's what I was using before, and it looks similar to me. I mean, if you're a gamer, the style's fine. If you're going to try to use it for business and walk into a boardroom, it's probably not the best option. But
you're gonna be like, are you working or playing? And you off a little bit at lunch or what?
I guess it depends on how high up the ladder you are.
Yeah, you can get away with it if you're up in the CEO.
If you're walking in there like a boss and you slap that down, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's good stuff, and of course, with it you get all the different Alienware lighting effects for different zones. We gave it a recommended, again, as tested, $14.99, $1,500 thereabouts. There's various SKUs available on Amazon, $1,500 to $1,700. And
do they offer a 17-inch version?
Yeah, well, they have the Alienware 17. It's absolutely it's a couple notches up in price and certainly weight as well. Now you're approaching 10 pounds, I believe, on that machine. But yeah, they've got the Alienware 17 and an 18 too, I believe, still. So I think that just about wraps us up. Marco, we're talking about getting together with a supplier for our next giveaway, and we've been kicking it around with the folks at Gigabyte. But do we have anything firm on that, or just sort of kicking the tires?
Just kicking the tires right now. Not sure if we're going to try to rope in a few more people and do a system, or if we're going to do some components. Still working out the kinks, but we did just give away the Cyber gaming PC to SL Munoz. Come by the site, you can see who won it. He was pretty excited. That contest just recently ended, and we're always working on the next one. We just don't have all the details yet, so stay tuned.
Yeah. So we gave away a Cyber gaming small form factor PC that, Paul, you actually reviewed, right?
Yes, I did. It's a sweet little system. He's gonna love it.
So it's what's it have on board? Do you remember what this config was?
Oh, you put me on the spot. No, I don't.
I think it was a Core i5 with a GTX 970 and a Samsung SSD and 60 gigs of RAM.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at it right now. Let's see if Marco's right. Core i5.
He is. It came back.
4690K, 3.5 gigahertz. Yeah.
Plenty of muscle for 1080p gaming. It boots into Steam Big Picture mode. It's a slick machine.
Nice, nice. So yeah, one of our lucky readers won that. We usually try and give away at least one cool thing a month, whether it be a system or some components. Giving back to the community. The way we do it is we try and entice you to engage with us in the audience with us here on the site and in the community on the site as well. Comments and all that good stuff back and forth on the site. You know, like a Facebook page. You know, share this, that out. Nothing crazy. Just a couple of little hoops, and then you're signed up. And you could win. So stay tuned for that. We'll probably be announcing in the next couple of weeks either a new system that we're going to give away, a custom-built system by possibly Marco. He's done that before, or components. So stick around. And if you want to check us out, of course, you can find us at HotHardware.com. Like and thumb up this video if we entertained you for this 45 minutes or so. Hopefully we were at least a little bit informative and entertaining. And if you Facebook, then you can check out facebook.com/HotHardware, twitter.com/HotHardware, G+, yeah, we're on there too, plus.hot or plus HotHardware /plus or whatever they call it. The URLs are too confusing. And that's about it. You know, we're kind of everywhere, like the scourge of the internet, right, Paul?
The scourge of the internet, yeah. I guess that about sums it up.
And do we have any parting words, gems of wisdom, or other snide remarks?
I think we've done enough today. Enough damage has been done in the last 5 minutes.
Thanks for stopping by, everybody. Take care, and we'll catch you in the next one.